Hello, my friends. I have a treat for you today. I recently had the privilege of interviewing my friend Clara for the podcast, and you guys are going to absolutely love her story. Clara Munger is 23 years old, who, when she was 21, had an abortion. As a Christian, it can be challenging to face the damaging effects and consequences of abortion. Clara has started her ministry, Redeemed and Restored Ministry, to share about her testimony and to bring hope that what the enemy meant for evil, God can turn it around for good. She cites Genesis chapter 50, verse 20 for that statement, and this is the verse. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. You guys, Clara is so articulate and well spoken, and you are just, like I said, you're in for a treat. I told her after the interview was over that I truly hope that I can share the gospel like she does, in the way that she does. It's so comforting, and I know that she truly is saving many lives. So, without further ado, here is my interview with my friend Clara Munger. Are you struggling with the pain of a past abortion and longing for help but don't know where to turn? Have you been made to believe that your sin of abortion is too big and too bad? Friend, if that's you, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Does God Forgive Abortion podcast. I'm Brittany, and you wouldn't know it just by looking at me, but I too walked through the doors of an abortion clinic and ended the life of my unborn child. I thought for years that I had committed the one sin that was unforgivable, and I awaited punishment from God. After years of prompting from the Holy Spirit, I finally found redemption and hope through Jesus. Now that I am healed, God has placed a calling on my heart to walk alongside you so that you can find true hope and healing too. If you're ready to recognize that God has a true plan and purpose for you, no matter what you have done in your past, then this podcast is for you. Fill up your favorite mug with some coffee and crack open your Bible, because it's time to receive the good news. Hello, friend. I want to just quick invite you to help me test out a fun new opportunity. As I've said, I've been praying over and over and over about this for over a year. So many overs. God really truly placed it on my heart to be there for the woman that feels alone, unworthy, and lost due to her past abortion or abortions. And since starting this podcast, I have received regular requests for one-on-one mentoring. So after fervently praying and receiving confirmation after confirmation from the Lord, it is finally time to get this out into the world. But again, I just need your help. I am working on beta testing my abortion recovery coaching framework, and I would just absolutely love the opportunity to speak with you one-on-one for an hour, where we will just go through that first step of the framework. Now, if you are at all interested in being a part of this beta testing process, which the testing process is absolutely completely free, you can head to bit.ly/abortion recovery beta, or you can grab the link in the show notes to schedule your free one-on-one call with me. I only have 5 spots available, and some of them are filling up, so I just have like a couple left. So make sure that you are one of the first 5. Now, if that link is closed when you click on it or go to it, that means that I have my 5, but stay tuned for a future launch, and I just absolutely cannot wait to work with you. Hello, everyone. I am here with my friend Clara, and I'm so excited for you to just really hear what she has to share with us. So, Clara, thank you for being here. I would love if you would just introduce yourself and just tell us more about who you are.
Yeah, so as Brittany said, I'm Clara Munger. A little bit kind of about me. I am from Austin, Minnesota, so kind of a small town. Grew up on kind of a family farm with 3 older brothers, the youngest, only girl. that kind of maybe puts into perspective a little bit what my household growing up experience was like. But grew up in a very strong Christian family household. Went to church, very connected with our home church. Growing up, we did a lot of sports, a lot of things outside, taking care of animals. So I'm very much a outdoorsy person, um, and just love spending time with family. My brothers are all married. Two of them got some nieces and nephews, so I love being able to spend time with my family. We're all kind of spread out a little bit, but when we all get the chance to get together, it's just a fun time to connect and spend time together. So I'll share a little bit more kind of just my personal testimony. As similar to Brittany, I had an abortion. I was 21 at the time, 23 now. And for me, this was never something, and I think you probably could relate, that I ever thought I would go through. It's never something I would have been like, yeah, I want to do this, or it was never anything that I had really experienced growing up. Um, we had talked about it in my family. I knew abortion was wrong, but it wasn't anything we really dove into. And it wasn't really until I think for me personally, these last couple of years that abortion has just really boomed in our culture and our society, where it's just like now everybody's talking about it. But growing up, for me at least, it wasn't anything that was really discussed about. Like I knew what abortion was and I knew that it was wrong. I didn't agree with it. And yet, I found myself on those doorsteps of like, well, what do I do? Um, and I think for me, and maybe even many people out there maybe listening or just getting to know my story and even your story, growing up Christian, having these morals and values instilled in us and believing, okay, this isn't right, believing in sex within marriage, that sex outside of marriage is wrong, and all of these things, people sit there and wonder, well, how did you do it? How did you find yourself there? And for me, it's hard to answer. Other than to simplify it is in those moments, I was so afraid. And it was like
Mm-hmm.
all reason just kind of went out my mind. You know, Sitting here today and reflecting back, I can sit there and go, Clara, why on earth would you be so fearful? Why on earth would you think this way? I can sit here and be like, I don't know what I was thinking. But that's just it, is like in those moments, I don't think I was truly processing what was going on. I was, under attack by the enemy of isolating me, making me fearful, kind of feeding me those lies of like, you're not financially stable to raise a kid. You're in a relationship that isn't committed, that isn't marriage. What is your family going to think? What are people going to think of your family? You have a reputation to uphold, like all these things that you're just getting attacked with and attacked with. And it's just like, as Christians, we're told we're going to face persecution. We're going to face those attacks. But I think sometimes we're not always taught how to deal when that happens. When you find yourself in a situation that you never thought you're going to find yourself in. And I think that's something our Christian culture and the church kind of lacks in, is just how do we raise up this next generation not to be fearful and not to ignore, but how do we allow them to understand like these are very real situations that you or somebody might find yourself in, and how do we deal with that in the right way? And so, at 21, was dating, in a relationship, we got pregnant, and I remember taking that test and seeing those two lines and just being so afraid. um, you know Looking back, it's like, man, I wish I could have been more excited, but there was just so much going on in my head of, well, crap, like, what am I going to do? What is my family going to think? I grew up in a Christian household. This isn't something that Christians do. Like, you don't get pregnant outside of marriage. Didn't do it the right way. And it's just like, I don't know, in those moments, the father and I were just like, I don't know, it's just like hard to explain other than just that reason just like left our minds, and the fear started taking hold, and that isolation from each other. We
Yeah.
sat down and kind of talked about like, what do we do? And I remember him saying, Clara, we're going to be fine. Like, both of our parents are, they might be surprised, and honestly they might be a little angry, But once they get over that, like it's going to be okay. I remember him saying that, and like both of our families are going to love this child and accept this child. And yet, even though we could realize this is going to be okay, the Bible talks about we have to be careful not letting the enemy build strongholds in our lives. And at that point, he and I were both Christians from a Christian household, from the same town. We went to different churches, but very similar beliefs. And yet, I think that just really points to we have to be so careful. When we're not focusing on God, we allow that door to open and for other things to start coming in and to be influenced slowly. And that's the thing, it starts off small and then it grows and grows. And then you find yourself in this pit and you're like, how did I end up here?
Mhm.
And so, that doorway had been opened from kind of the very beginning of our relationship of just continuing to kind of compromise in our faith within that relationship with each other until we found ourselves pregnant. And it's just like, well, now what do we do? Like, you know, do we keep the baby? Do we not? Like, if we go with abortion, like, nobody has to know. Ironically enough, people end up finding out. Like this weight, as I'm sure this weight that is just still unbearable comes on you. And it's like to carry that. I've met people that they've carried that for 20 years before they finally opened up. And I'm just like, I can't imagine carrying that weight for 20 years. It took me a year and a half before I finally told anybody. And that year and a half was probably one of the worst years and a half I've ever lived. Like it was miserable. I was struggling so much. Um, and so, you know, people out there might be thinking, well, even though you knew this wasn't right and you knew family members are going to be okay and you guys would be okay, why did you do it? How could you do it? Again, I don't know if I really have a specific answer for those
Mhm.
questions. I think those are questions I'm still kind of searching for myself of like, how did I end up here? What led to this? Again, kind of just that simple answer is, the enemy had grabbed a hold of both of us
Mhm.
and we had allowed him into our lives and into our relationship. And when we don't have the Lord at the center of any relationship, it opens a gate to let
Mhm.
all this other stuff in of, oh, well, we'll let this pass or we'll do this. And it creates so much destruction and hardship. Um, and so I remember we had kind of, that first night I took in that pregnancy test, it kind of been like, okay, like this is happening. Um, let's take some time and think about it. And we did. And looking back, I wish we would have taken some time to think about it actually together. Um, After that initial reaction and finding out, we didn't really talk much about it until a few days later. And that was kind of when we decided, abortion was brought up, and neither one of us really said no to that. And I think if one of us would just been like, oh, wait a minute, like, is this really what we want to do? I think we would have potentially gone down a different road. But, when you're in a situation that isn't right, that you've committed a sin, it's really, really hard to come forward and say, hey, I've done this. And so, Satan knew that we were fearful of that and he latched onto that. Um, and so like I said, abortion was brought up and we kind of just went with it. I don't think it was something either one of us wanted. And yet we didn't really know any other way out. Um, a way for me, how I kind of felt in that moment was damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like I knew there were going to be repercussions if I went and told people, and I knew there were going to be repercussions going down this route with abortion. And yet, society, um, Satan just kind of made that look better. Unfortunately, it seemed like a better option. And so we made that appointment. We went in, and I remember sitting in the Planned Parenthood and just being like, I don't really want to do this. But I couldn't find my voice. And, you know, the father, I think he himself was just kind of, I know he didn't want to do it either. And, I can't really speak for him and what was going on for him in that moment. But I think for both of us, it's just like we didn't want this, but we didn't really know what else to do. We're young.
Mm.
I was 21, he was 20. Um, it just in a situation that just wasn't what we were expecting at all. And when we kind of are in that unexpected, you just do things that you're like, you look back and you're like, what was I thinking? And so, we went through, took the first pill there, and then I think it's about 48 hours later, I took that second pill, and that was kind of when those crampings started happening. So I should say I had a chemical abortion and not a surgical one. And so, took that second pill, and that evening, I just remember I was in the worst pain I've ever been in my entire life. Um, and I remember getting up early in the morning. I want to say it's probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. And this is very common with chemical abortions. Obviously, because you're expelling the baby at home, it's not happening at a clinic. I remember I got up to go to the bathroom and I sat on the toilet and I remember hearing kind of a plunk. I didn't look. And to this day, I'm kind of glad I didn't because I've read so much of women having these abortions at home and they're seeing their 10-week-old baby and they're seeing the hands and the feet. They're watching that heartbeat as it slowly fades away. And I'm just like, I can't, I think that would have been so much extra trauma for me to have to process. But I
Mhm.
distinctly remember going to the bathroom and hearing that plunk and just thinking, was that my baby? And I was too afraid to look.
Mm.
And so I just kind of flushed it. I went back, tried to go back to bed, still feeling a lot of cramps. And I just, after that happened, it's just kind of hollowness, just
Mm.
feeling empty and numb. Um, we we didn't really talk much about it after the abortion happened. It just kind of, again, we thought, okay, well, let's get it done, one and done, and never have to think about it, never have to talk about it again. And for a while, we didn't. It just kind of, we just tried to live our lives like normal. Um, every once in a while, I might, brought it up to him and just been like, I don't know, I'd be looking at a picture of a baby and just be like, man, like, how are you feeling? Like, just trying to get some sort of conversation because to not talk about it was hard, and yet to talk about it was really hard. Um, and so, for probably 6 months or so, it just wasn't anything that we really talked about. And it wasn't until after he and I broke up that spring that like everything kind of just like spiraled. Like I had lost the only person that knew, my only connection of when I needed to talk about it. This was somebody, even though we didn't talk much about it, I could go to because he knew. And I think for me, in my heart, that was kind of the opportunity, kind of what got those wheels started for me to start realizing I need to talk about this. It took me probably another 6 months or so before I really even told anybody. But, it got those wheels turning because I no longer had kind of this support person. I was on my own and I was really struggling. And, I knew, I'm like, I know I need to go, I need to talk about this. I need to get some sort of help because it just, my life was horrible. It was horrible. I'm sure as you can kind of relate, it was a struggle and I was depressed
Mhm.
all the time. I was sad. It just like, in my mind, I thought it's not because of the abortion, it's because I'm going through a breakup, it's because of this. I ended up moving out of Austin to just kind of get myself out of that environment. And even after I moved, it's just like, it was so hard. Like, I don't know why I'm struggling so much. And, I had started seeing a therapist maybe June of 22. And she was, I think, one of the first people that I told because I knew she couldn't go and tell people
Right.
as part of their confidentiality. And so I would have conversations with her, but in my heart, as time kept going on, I just like I knew I had to tell my family, whether that just be like with my parents, like I knew I had to share this with them because it was a burden that it's like I couldn't keep carrying on my own. And, you know, I had discussed it with my therapist of like, well, what is this going to kind of look like? How should we do it? And in December of 22, my parents and I had met with my therapist and shared that with them. And that was really hard. I was fearful to share that with them because it's like, what are they going to think? Like, are they going to hate me? Are they going to, I didn't know. And, I can't speak for my parents, but I'm sure it was really, really tough for them to hear that, to know that I was struggling so much and was
Mhm.
afraid to come to them. I'm not a parent myself, but I can only imagine of how hard that must be as a parent to sit there and listen to your kid tell you something and you're just like, man, I wish I could have been there for you. Um, and so I told them, and I just remember that next day, it was just like this weight was that I didn't even know was there was just lifted. It was like I could breathe again for the first time in almost over a year. Um, and then a couple weeks later, the rest of my family had gathered for Christmas, and I told them. And again, that was man, it was so hard. I was so scared again because it's just like these are, the people that know me the best, and it's just like, how can I share this with them? And it was really hard for them to hear again, and yet it allowed for us as a family to, kind of grow closer together.
Mhm.
Hardships can kind of do that, bring people together. It was very challenging for them, and I'm sure it was a lot for them to process and to just kind of digest on their own. And yet I almost in some sense feel so much closer to my family now because I can have those open conversations with them about the abortion. Whereas before, I would be talking maybe to my dad about, man, I'm really struggling with this. But I had to stop at some point
Mhm.
because I knew if I kept going, then it could lead to a conversation about sharing about my abortion. And I didn't want to do that. And so as hard as those moments were, I found such, freedom and just, man, just happiness and light in sharing that with my family because I was no longer keeping a secret from them, from the people that were most important to me. And it allowed all of us to kind of check in with each other more often and to have kind of these open conversations about what's going on and, how can we be helping you? How can we be praying for you? And that was kind of what's led me into wanting to start my own ministry. And I know you have a couple questions about that, so I'll maybe stop there and then we can maybe dive in if you'd like.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I don't even have words. I just
Mm,
think that you went through so much, and the fact that you've been able to go to your family and share that with them and have them love you through it and be accepting and wanting to just like grow closer. I think that's what women need to hear because,
mm,
as you
yeah.
said, so many women take this secret with them for years and decades, and some even to the grave. And
Mm,
the amount of stress that has on us, just having that closeness with the people in our life that we love and allowing them to carry that burden with us, because that's what we're supposed to do, is just
mhm.
so inspiring that you shared that. And I hope that that will help those listening for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, we want to hear about your ministry. So tell us the name of your ministry
Yeah.
and what led you to start it, and just all the things.
Yeah. So, after I kind of shared with my family, I knew I needed additional help. As beneficial as talking with my therapist was, I knew I needed more biblical healing, just
Mhm.
outside of what my therapist could kind of offer. And I remember a book had been shared with me, a post-abortive book from a Christian. I forget the name of it. I think it's Her Choice to Heal or something like that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
in the back of this book, yep, I read it and I sobbed. But that was just kind of the start of like, okay, I'm not the only one out there. But in the back of that book, they had a website to resources to pregnancy centers all across the United States. And so I was like, well, this could maybe be a start to finding some other healing outside of just kind of talking with my therapist. And so I had looked up on this website. Obviously, I looked in Minnesota. I was living in the cities at the time, and so I kind of looked for some pregnancy centers close to where I was, and I found one, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just click on it and see what happens. And so on this website, they had a post-abortion healing Bible study. And so I messaged the number and I said, hi, I'm looking to do this post-abortion healing study. And, they got back to me and they said, okay, like you'll be talking with Angela. She's the one that leads this. And so that was kind of what got me started on kind of really what brought the most healing in my life. I went through the Bible study, Healing Hearts. Um, I know there's a whole bunch out there. I've kind of done a couple other ones, but this one has just it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so packed with biblical points. I mean, almost every single question you're reading a Bible verse. It's like a 10-week Bible study. So you have a section that you work on once a week that you meet up with your mentor. And it's just packed with what does the Bible have to say about abortion? How does God view abortion? You know, what as Christians does it mean to be forgiven? Has God forgiven me? Like there's so much good content in there that it just, there were points where I was crying because it's just like I was finding that freedom and that forgiveness that I thought
Mhm.
I had kind of given to myself. But in the Bible, it's never told us we can forgive ourselves. We
Mhm.
can only accept forgiveness from God, which then allows us to forgive others. But we ourselves can't offer forgiveness. Only Christ can give us that forgiveness. And so it wasn't until I was diving into what does the Bible have to say about this? How does God view this? How does God view me now after I've had an abortion? Does he still love me? Does he still forgive me? Diving into all these questions and getting those answers, gave me that freedom and allowed me to realize I can't forgive myself for this. I have to accept it. And for the longest time, I thought I had until I went through that study and I realized, no, I haven't really, because I was still kind of blaming myself. I was still putting it on me of like, you're a bad person. You've done this. You're horrible. All these negative thoughts. And I still struggle with those from time to time, but it's way less. And when those moments happen, I can sit there and go, no, Clara, like, you're forgiven.
Mhm.
God no longer holds this against you. He's wiped it clean. This is the enemy trying to attack me because he doesn't like the fact that I've been able to accept that forgiveness. And so in these 10 weeks of doing this Bible study, um, I kept feeling kind of this call and this just feeling in my heart of I need to share this. And I was like, whoa, what are you like? Okay, Lord, like what is going on here? Because if anybody knows me, I am very quiet. I hate being center of attention. Like I'm that person that sits in the back, kind of my head down, like don't notice me. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And I wrestled with this for a long time because I'm like, why? Like I hate doing this stuff. I hate speaking in public. I hate doing this stuff. I hate it. Hate it. Hate it. And yet, like it was such this desire to want to do it. I'm like, what is going on here? Like this is not at all what I want to do. But I knew it was from the Lord because he was calling me to do something I didn't want to do.
Mm.
And that's
Yep.
how the Lord works so many times. He's like, Clara, you're doing this. And I'm just like, I don't know about this. Like, what about this? And what about this? I feel kind of like Moses, like, oh, I'm not qualified. Like, I can't public speak. This scares me. And the Lord's just like, we're doing it. And so, I somehow I was like, well, I don't know a lot about networking. I don't know a lot of people. I didn't have a lot of resources, but I had this calling. And I was like, you know what? I know nothing. about how to public speak or how to get my name out there, but I have the Lord, and that's more than enough. And
Mm.
so I just kind of started praying about it and thinking about it. I talked a lot with my mentor about it. I talked with kind of my brothers and my family about it, just like, is this really from the Lord? I wanted to make sure, like, okay, this is really what He's calling me to do. It's not from something else, because sometimes we can kind of make up these callings in our head of, oh, well, the Lord told me to do this when He actually didn't. And so I wanted to be sure before I really dived into it. And I just one day decided, you know what, I'm just going to make a website. And so I went online, just kind of looked up a website site and just kind of started creating, which brought me to the ministry I have now, which is Redeemed and Restored Ministry. And it took probably a good 7 months from the start of when all this happened. So I took that Bible study, I think beginning of January of 23. And so kind of by the end of January, that Bible study was finishing up. And when I started kind of trying to build a website, creating a Facebook page, Instagram, just trying to do something. And it took probably a good 7 months of praying every day of like, Lord, like, this is a calling you place on my life. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to reach out to people. I don't even know what I'm doing, but I want, like, I know you can bring people to my door. I know you can open doors. I know you can provide opportunities. And it was in July, I think it was July 4th. I had messaged Tim Miller, which I think he was the one that connected us. My
Yes.
sister-in-law, my sister-in-law had worked with him um, when he was a representative for the state of Minnesota. And I remember I was over at their house one weekend, I think in June, just kind of throwing out these ideas of like, hey, do you know of any pro-life organizations in Minnesota that I could just start reaching out to and just kind of sharing my story and just seeing what kind of answer I might get. My sister-in-law is like, I know a person. And she's like, you can
Yes.
put my name out there. Like, you can tell them, so and so told you to reach out. And so I did that. And I think I messaged him, must have been like July 3rd or something. And I thought it was just like such a strange thing that July 4th, he's messaging me on July 4th, a national holiday. And he's just like, let's do this. He's like, I want to meet you. Like, this is awesome. And I'm just like, whoa, Lord, like, this is a lot. Like, I'd been praying since January till July almost, like, unsure of like what's going to happen. When is this going to happen? Is it even going to happen? Like, I knew I wanted to do this, but I wasn't really seeing the results I was hoping for. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, I met Tim Miller and he just started connecting me to all these different, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, all right, Lord, like, this is a lot. And but it's been such a blessing
Mhm.
for me to just, to reach out to these people, and been able to have quite a lot of speaking opportunities. So I've gone out to Princeburg and spoken at their Christian college or Christian school. I think it's like kindergarten through high school. And so I had, I think, sixth grade to high school that I
Wow.
spoke to. And
Mm.
so that was such an amazing opportunity. I've had an opportunity to speak to a women's group out there, a youth group out there. I've had a couple speaking opportunities over in Rochester. I've had some up in the cities now too, so I don't have to drive as far.
Yes.
But it's just like, so many people think, okay, well, I've had this calling and it's going to happen right now. You know, and we want it to happen because I wanted it to happen. And yet, looking back and just reflecting, it's like if I had been presented with a speaking opportunity, you know, fresh out of Healing Hearts Bible study, as excited and hopeful as I was, I don't think I would have been mentally and emotionally prepared to talk about it. I
Mhm.
was still healing, the wounds were still very fresh. And I just, those first few times kind of sharing my stories with people, I could hardly get through it. Like, not that that's a bad thing, but it was such a fresh wound.
Mhm.
And I can still get very emotional talking about my story and just everything I've gone through. And yet I can sit here without like losing my composure in some sense. And I'm able to get words out. Um, but I want to kind of give encouragement to people out there who are listening of if there's a calling that, like the Lord has on your
Mhm.
heart, on your life, it's okay if it doesn't happen right away. So many times in the Bible, we see Joseph waited, Moses waited, Abraham waited. There's a lot that happens in the waiting. It's really,
Mm.
really hard, and it's really frustrating, and it's easy to want to give up. And yet, it's in that waiting that the Lord is preparing you. Because as much as we think, no, I'm ready right now, I don't think we usually are. Not to the extent that we could be if we wait a little longer. And so,
Mhm.
it took probably 7 months before some of this started happening, where I started making these connections and having these opportunities I was looking for. And it was hard. It was discouraging at times. And yet I kept praying. I was like, okay, Lord, like I want to do this. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do, but I'm trusting you in this. And that was hard. It was really hard, but I knew in my heart that those opportunities would come because I knew that this is what the Lord was calling me to do. Um, I had read a book sometime in January of 23, and one Bible verse, it just kept repeating itself in that book, was Genesis 50:20. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it so people can look it up later, but it's basically um, what the enemy meant for evil, God will use it for good. And that verse just like was kind of a lifeline for me. I clung to it, and I still do. I have it tattooed on my wrist, so every time I
Mm.
look at it, it's just this constant reminder of the Lord will always take the bad and use it for good.
Mm.
It sometimes is hard to imagine that that could ever happen, but He's got
Mhm.
such amazing plans for us that like we can't even begin to fathom. Of I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm not still just like in these new phases of speaking and sharing that it's like I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm trusting that it's going to be good. And even if I only ever reach one person, that one person to me is always worth it. And if I reach
Mhm.
100 people, those 100 people are always going to be worth it. Um, so yeah, I'm excited to see where this is going to take me. Being able to speak with you and join you on your podcast is so amazing. And again, such a God thing of these
Mhm.
connections that get made of
Yes.
just trusting him, trusting in his timing, even though it's really hard. And just, when that opportunity presents itself, to just kind of go for it. I still get nervous every time I have a speaking engagement. In my head, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, why did I say yes? And I'm all nervous up until the point that it's like I'm up there and I'm talking. And then it's just like that worry and that fear just disappears. And afterwards, it's just like, man, that was so good. Like I was blessed. And I
Mm.
hope those people were blessed to hear my story. But it's like, even if they weren't, I was blessed. It's like I always am so very humbled when I have an opportunity to share because it's just like I know this is good. I know this is going to do good somewhere, and it's doing good for me. So I'm going to keep doing it. And you know, I don't know what the Lord has in store for me. I have my own hopes and dreams of my ministry, and yet I'm still learning. Okay, Lord, like I have to slow it down and let him lead me because man, I'm excited. Like there's so many things that I want to do and so many things I'm trying to explore. And yet, the Lord's kind of, okay, Clara, like, yes, we're gonna take it back a notch though, because there's other things that, maybe I need to do before I can get here. And so I just am excited to see where this takes me and always excited and blessed to have any opportunity that I can to share and to talk with people because it's so needed in our world today.
Mm.
um,
Yes. Mhm.
there's people out there that need to know it's going to be okay, and there's people here for you that care about you, and you don't have to do this alone. And your story is going to look different from mine, but in a lot of ways we're all connected because of what we've gone through. and
Mhm.
and even if you don't have the support that I've been blessed to have, my family, I not a day goes by that I don't feel blessed to have their love and their support, because it would make it that much harder to be able to do this. But for people to know, that there are people like you and me out here, it's like we're here for you.
Hmm.
We want to pray for you. We want to encourage you. We want to let you know that you don't have to be alone, and that there's safe places to go to. And so I don't know. I don't know what the Lord has in store, but I am excited to see where He's going to take me.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love how trusting you are of him and just I'm thinking back to when you were saying how you're like, I hate public speaking. I don't want to do this and how he doesn't call us to be comfortable and I
Right.
just am thankful and love that you've embraced that and you do
Yeah.
it so I would not guess that talking to you
Mm.
that
Well,
you would
that's good.
feel that way because you are just so well spoken
Mm.
and just composed and I just he called the right person, that's for sure.
Well,
As
thank
he
you.
does. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Um do you are you willing to share some of your goals for your ministry? I know you're letting God
Sure,
lead, but we'd love
sure.
to hear what you're kind of thinking too.
Yeah. Man, I have so many that I'm just gonna try to like narrow it down to a few. I'd love to do a podcast like you're doing. Um, I've thought a lot about it, of why I kind of picked the name Redeemed and Restored. As much as I want to be sharing about, my story and about the abortion, I want to find a generation, a young adult generation of people who have these testimonies that could join me on my ministry. Whether it be they've struggled with pornography or they've had sexual assault. Like, there's so many people out there in our world today who have gone through so much, who have been through so much. And, sometimes you feel lost until you find that one person, that one connection. It's like, okay, I'm not alone in this. I kind of take some of my inspiration from Sadie Robertson of
Mm.
she's just out there to reach that younger generation, that young adult generation. And I want to be able to find, um, you know, a, a group of young adults, Christian young adults that are willing to kind of put themselves out there and to be a light in this world for other people who are hurting or feeling lost or going through something. Um, and so that's, a hope of mine is to be able to start adding people, whether they just who knows what that's going to look like, whether we kind of do our own speaking things or, I have a blog, maybe they just kind of write on the blog. I'd love to do a podcast. So whether they share their stories and we just kind of talk about things, obviously I don't want to ignore my testimony because there are people out there who are going through something very similar and, you know, could be the one person that they're like, man, okay, like I'm not alone. Like, they can kind of be that one voice in the darkness in some sense. But I also want to focus on so many other things that are happening in our world, be able to reach those other people who maybe they haven't had an abortion, but they've had their own trials and hardships that I might not necessarily be able to relate to, but somebody else might. So that's kind of a hope. I'd love to become more of a full-time speaker, whether that's just simply me going out and sharing my testimony, which is a lot of what I've been doing, or I currently work at a pregnancy center, and so maybe it's me kind of going out to other pregnancy centers and speaking in that kind of community. Um, I just, again, I'm like, why would I want to do that? Because I hate public speaking, but it's just like, oh man, I really want to. Like, I want my voice to be out there. I want to bring encouragement and bring light to people. And so that's kind of a hope of mine. Um, I am currently in involved in kind of a legal project, which I'm really excited about. I don't want to share too much, just because we want to be a little discreet and just
Hmm.
so that those that we're bringing this case against don't can't really it's going to be a surprise in some sense. And so
Yeah.
um but it's something that once it kind of gets out, I'm sure people are going to know about it. And so that's something, as nervous as I am about that, going up in a legal sense, I'm also just really excited because it's just so needed in our culture
Mhm.
today, in the world that we live in, of just the craziness. I don't know how else to put it, the craziness of what's going on. And, I think of all these hurting men and women out there who've been hurted by the abortion industry, who have been lied to, who are, led to believe that abortion is normal, it's to be praised. There's so much out there that it breaks my heart, because these
Mhm.
people are being told one thing of, this is normal, it's okay, like your life will go on, happy dory, sunshine and rainbows, and yet they're experiencing something different. And there's this conflict that's going on of, well, I'm told this is how it should be and this is how I should react, and yet this is where I'm at. I'm hurting. I quit my job. Like, it's just like my life is spiraling. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
I'm confused, because that was even my reaction of like, I'll just continue on as nothing happened. And that's not the truth. Like, I struggled for so long, and
Yeah.
I couldn't really figure out why. I think in my heart I knew why. I didn't want to confront the abortion. I wanted to ignore it, shove it under the rug, and just leave it down there and never look at it again. And in our culture, it's just, we're being fed these lies of, this is okay, this is normal. I've seen videos of people having rituals,
Oh.
recording their abortions, of just,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going to Target and getting my Tylenol and getting this, and I'm going to have an abortion today, and they're happy. And it's just like, my heart breaks for these women that are participating in that, of just, where are they going to be when that happens?
Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen? Because it will. It could be 15, 20, 50 years down the line when they're like, man, what do I do with this? I've done this. And a lot of times, I don't think we often realize that an abortion can be affecting so much of our lives. It's
Mhm.
just, we've put it in a jar, closed it away, and just, we never want to look at it. And yet it starts to seep out into every aspect. And we start trying to figure out, okay, why is my life a mess? Why is my job struggling? Why is my marriage struggling? Why am I struggling with my kids? Why am I struggling? And we want to just, we've locked that jar away and just never want to acknowledge it. And so people think, well, it can't be because of that, because it's normal and it's fine, and it's just an abortion, it's not a big deal. And yet it is. Whether you're Christian or not, we're all created in the image of God.
Mhm.
And so, we have those characteristics. And because God views abortion as wrong, whether these people are Christians or not, they're struggling, because to the core of them, they know it's wrong. Whether they believe that or not, is a different story. But it just kind of makes me realize, like, it's so true of how we're created in his image, because even though these people who aren't Christians might not have those same beliefs, they're struggling just as much, because whether or not they believe in him, they're created in God's image. And in his image, abortion is not correct. It's wrong. It's a sin. And so we're naturally going to suffer those consequences, deal with those consequences, until we seek him for help, forgiveness, and healing. And I hope and pray that, as people like you and me, other people share their stories and testimonies, that we can start tearing down those lies that Satan has created, and showing people the truth in love, of course, and just being there, and being a safe place for these people that might be hurting.
Amen. I love that. I think that's beautiful. And if and when you do start your podcast, we'd love to have you back so that we
Yes,
can share and just
that would
get
be
to know
awesome.
about that and promote it for you too. And
Hmm.
I just think it's great. So, my last question for you is, what would you say to the woman listening right now who is just hurting and doesn't know what to do next?
Mm, great question. I guess I can really only go off of my experience of, I really couldn't find that healing and freedom until I talked to somebody. Um, that whether that's a friend, a mentor, a family member, um, like I said, pregnancy centers, pregnancy resource centers out there, they're here to help you. So if you don't feel like you have somebody safe, their doors are always open. I know there's a lot of kind of misconception around pregnancy centers right now of, not being medical, not being safe, all this crazy stuff. And that might be true for some places, but like I said, I currently work at a pregnancy center. And, more than anything, when we have women walk through our doors, because we have who are abortion minded and leave still abortion determined, we want them to leave knowing this is a safe place. So whether they go and have that abortion and 5 years down the line, they're struggling and they go back to, man, I remember I went to that one place and they were just so kind and willing to listen to what I had to say and didn't force anything on me. I'm going to go back to that because it felt safe. Um, my encouragement to whoever might be listening is to just, you know, not being a Christian, whether you're a Christian or not, the Lord is always there. I
Mhm.
don't want to force religion on somebody, but he is there, and there
Mhm.
is solace and forgiveness and healing and freedom to be found in his arms. And yet, if that's not something you feel comfortable with, I hope that you have someone in your life that you feel safe and comfortable with going to and sharing that with. Because I know for me, sharing with my family, telling my friends about it, as scary as it was, as terrifying as it was, that relief that I was searching for, it just like everything just I could breathe again. And I just and even then, if you don't have somebody, Brittany or I, we're always here,
Mhm.
whether you want it to be anonymous or however you reach out that way, it's just there are people out there who want to care, who care and want to hear. Sometimes it can be challenging to find that, but there are people out there um, that more than anything just want to make sure that you're okay.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Where can people find you if they're interested in connecting with you?
Yeah, so like I said, my ministry is Redeemed and Restored. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And I also have a website. So you can connect me Facebook or message me on Instagram. I do have an email on my website. And I'm pretty sure it's probably on both of my social media handles that you're welcome to email me with. Um, if you know Tim Miller, you could reach out to him and talk to him. He would get you. He's a great guy. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook, and my website is probably one of the easiest ways to find me.
Awesome. I'll have all of that linked in the show notes. So if you're
Okay.
listening, you can go to the show notes and connect with Clara if you want to reach out to her and follow her ministry because she has some really inspiring posts on Instagram for sure. I I love following you there and seeing
Oh,
your
thanks.
reels and just the way you share the gospel is so comforting and yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Clara, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I hope to have you back again. And I
Yes.
just can't thank you enough for being so open and sharing your story.
Mm. Well, thank you, Brittany, for this opportunity. This is awesome and an inspiration for me. I'm excited to maybe get my own podcast going. So
Yes, yes, I'll be praying for you for that, and I
thank you.
can't wait to hear more.
Thank you.
Wasn't that amazing? Like I said at the beginning, Clara is absolutely so articulate and her story is just so inspiring. I just pray that you have been blessed by it, and I'm so thankful that she agreed to come on and just share how Jesus has completely transformed her heart and healed her from the past sin of abortion. And I would encourage you to follow her ministry, Redeemed and Restored Ministry. You can find her website. Literally, it's redeemedandrestoredministry.com. So I would encourage you to go there. Again, as I said, all of the links will be in the show notes so that you can easily click on them. But I would just encourage you to follow along with her. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you so much for Clara and for allowing us to be connected, Lord. And I just thank you for giving her that calling to share her testimony. How many lives is she going to have saved, Lord, when she gets to eternity? I can imagine the long line of people, Lord, that are going to be waiting there to meet her and say thank you for sharing the gospel with me, because that is why I'm here. You're the reason I'm here. And so just thank you, Lord, for bestowing that upon her and for giving her the courage to do that. And I just want to pray blessings over her and pray for her safety and pray for her, any spiritual warfare that she may endure, Lord. And I just pray for the women listening again, that they be encouraged by Clara's testimony and that they will feel more equipped to be able to step into the healing that you have for them. It's such a scary step, but Lord, as Clara can attest and as I can attest, it is just so absolutely worth it. And so I pray for these women listening, and I just continue to pray for peace and protection as always, Lord, for each of us, and just allow us to go into the rest of the week and the weekend living for you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, beautiful friend, I hope that you found comfort from today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share this podcast with someone you know that may be seeking wholeness after abortion? Also, I would be over the moon grateful if you would please consider leaving a review wherever you are listening. It truly encourages me to know this podcast is helping you. Lastly, I want to remind you that we are here for you. If you would like to connect with the community of women healing from the past decision of abortion, please join us in our private Facebook group at bit.ly/DGFA group. Know that I continue to pray for you daily, and I am so thankful for you. I'll meet you back in a few days for a brand new episode, but until then, take care and God bless.